The issue in the world right now is that there is so much polarization going on, and that polarization is being used by elites to put people up against each other in order to rule over them and to give solutions to chaos, the chaos that is created because of the polarization. That is a restructuring into order from a control perspective of elites of wanting to control people. So they create the chaos, the polarization, while everyone's fighting each other. They are playing the chessboard, people up against each other. And then they bring up their system of control, like they've always used this tactic throughout the ages. But now it's in hyperdrive. And there's so much technology that's being used right now to further this process and to move the world into total control. Now, I don't want to talk so much about specifics at this moment of this is going on versus this is going on, because often I feel like when I'm doing that, it's like a reaction. It's like we're being reactive. There's something happening. They created a new polarization. Some new type of crisis emerges. Some new type of war. Some, sickness that is going around or whatever it is. Some attack somewhere is happening. And then they use the media and they create these sides of the arguments and people fight each other while they're laughing at you. While they're playing you like pawns. But my intention here is not to create this polarization again of like, look at them, it's us versus them. Well, in a way it is. I mean, the 99.99999% of humans mostly just want to live in peace. But there's this really tiny, minute group of psychopaths that is pulling the strings and creating this chaos for them to create order. But I don't really want to talk about this polarization as well, where it's us versus them. That's that little 0.0001% of people that are the psychopaths that are doing this and that are using other people to further their agenda. I want to go to the root of it. And I want to explain it from a spiritual perspective so that we can transcend this once and for all. Now, I'm not going to say that just watching this video or just looking at it differently will change the world, but it's a start. It's a start to understand, if you will really understand what is happening. So the mechanisms they use is basically also just a way for us to understand reality, for us to grow in consciousness. Because we live in a dualistic world, which means for something to exist in this reality, it has to have two poles. There's always another side to something. Because in order for you to perceive something, to have an experience of something, there needs to be an opposite. So there's darkness and light. There's hot and cold. There's masculine and feminine. And you can create an infinite amount of these distinctions. But you only have an experience of what light is because you've also experienced darkness. If there was only light and darkness didn't exist, you wouldn't know what light is. You wouldn't have an experience of it. It's only because of these opposites, that we are able to perceive something. Now, understanding duality and polarities goes way further than what I've just explained, but this is the basis. You have to understand that there's always an opposite to something. And in reality, the real truth is that always the two poles are actually the same. They're actually one. They're just different ends of the spectrum. Like for instance with temperature, where does hot begin and where does cold begin? It's just, they're the same thing. It's temperature, but hot and cold are just different from different perspectives. They're just different ends of the same thing. Now that is key, because what happens when we polarize? We can look at it, for instance, in politics. You have the left and the right, two sides. But what happens when we polarize? It's when we identify ourselves as being more of the one side. I'm a leftist. I'm on the right. I'm a conservative. I'm a liberal. These sides, when we polarize one direction, we basically deny a part of the truth. Because the truth is that in both sides are part of reality. The truth is never one-sided. There's always different perspectives to truth. And in order to find a real truth and to live in harmony with reality, with existence, we should be able to always ponder both sides and to not be controlled because we just are polarized into one direction. When we are polarized in a direction, it's not just that we just have that stance about, yeah, I think this is right, or, you know, it's that it's like an energetic, physical feeling in your body as well. That when somebody challenges you on something, on like a viewpoint you may have or something, then you are often physically, you feel some type of feeling in your body, like a trigger. It triggers something. It can trigger something in you that makes you want to defend this side that you are on, because you've put your identity into this side. This side is who you are. And that's where you are being controlled. And it's not just that you're being controlled by some elites who do this, because they do this, of course. But this is the nature of reality, and this mechanism is there for you to eventually transcend it. For you to transcend this duality thinking, this duality being, and to understand it from a more non-dual, depolarized state. And then, when you are able to depolarize these two poles of anything, of whatever it is, the more you're able to do that and see both sides like a helicopter view, and understand why people on this side think this and why people on that side think that, and not be a slave to just be polarized in one direction, where you're more neutral. You can still have a polarization towards something, but it will be very, very light. And you won't be controlled by it anymore. It wouldn't be that if somebody says something about that thing, or you're just being confronted on something, that you have this draw within you that makes you just defend that side or go into that side or hate the other side, have negative feelings against the other side. No, now it's more neutral, because you can see the value of both sides. You can see where they come from. You can see it. You can be more in a loving state. When somebody is polarized, you're like, oh, that person's polarized. You basically empathize with them because they are being controlled. They are not free. They are being controlled because they're polarized. They're not able to transcend it. They're stuck in one side of reality. And what love is a unity of both. Love is always finding the unity of both, being able to integrate both. And that's where you can basically come to some type of unification of paradoxes, unification of two seemingly opposite concepts and seeing where they're both true. That is true spiritual growth. That is how you actually start to transcend things and really grow in consciousness. And that is where, once you're able to do that, once we are more collectively able to do that as a humanity, we will transcend all those control mechanisms that are being used on us by these elite psychopaths, who are basically, in a sense, just fulfilling a role to help us transcend duality. And we are playing an infinite game. So you cannot blame them as well. You can also depolarize that they are doing that. Of course, from a human perspective, you can still be polarized slightly, just more grounded towards wanting the best for humanity and us not being manipulated by these psychopaths. But it doesn't help if you're just blindly polarized and just being controlled. So I hope that I've given you a glimpse of what the solution here is. And it starts with yourself. It's hard to depolarize people. It's really hard. But to depolarize yourself, you need to start to see, like, where am I polarized? Where am I seeing something only from one perspective, only from one side? And where am I triggered when somebody says something in the opposite direction? And where do I actually judge? That's where you see it. Where you judge the other for taking a certain side. Where do you have your judgments? And I'm not saying we can't make distinctions. I'm not saying that, for instance, you should be pro-violence or whatever, but are you able to depolarize it? Are you able to see it from a more neutral place, where you can even have compassion for somebody who does something really, really wrong, really, really harmful to someone? Are you able to see it from a different perspective, from a higher perspective, where you transcend being human almost? Because you're able to see a helicopter view. You see what maybe somebody went through and what was done to someone. For instance, somebody was maybe traumatized in their youth or whatever, and then they became a killer or whatever. Are you able to see it more from that higher perspective, how things happen in this reality? So that you are not that just so easily controllable by your emotions, by your polarization into certain directions. And I'm saying this, well, I'm a work in progress as well, because I still get polarized by a lot of stuff. But I know this is a daily practice. And being able to depolarize yourself will be the best thing you can ever do for yourself. Because that's where true inner healing also comes from. It's where you stop judging things. It's where you start to just feel what some event does with you and then move through it instead of living in reaction to it, or trying to push certain things away. So because you're polarized and it's not good, you don't want something. Let's say you don't want to feel a certain feeling, then you're polarized in a different direction. You're saying this situation is not good, or this feeling is not good. I don't want it. But that means that you're denying a part of reality if you're feeling that way. So with your feelings, you also need to feel your feelings and accept a situation that you might find bad and see what's good about it too. Because in everything is the other side as well. In the good is also the bad. It's the yin and yang sign. That is a nice symbol that really is a beautiful way of symbolizing this. Because in every situation you can find also benefits. You can find drawbacks and you can find benefits. It's because it's built into reality that way. And for you, the conscious observer, if you decide to look at it in a certain way, that is more of how it will be in the reality that you experience. So whenever you encounter a problem in life, if you look at it from a certain perspective, that thing that happens, that obstacle that might cause you to feel really bad, and at first glance you're like, I don't want this. This is bad. This is really bad for my life, whatever. That's a perspective. That means you're polarized against it. But what if you now just leave that polarity aside for a second, then look at it from the other side? What's good about this polarity? What's good about this bad thing? How can this be a blessing in disguise? And when you're able to do that, that's where things start to change. Because now you're starting to see the benefits of it. How is this helping me? Oh, it's helping me like this. Or how could this later, when I look back at my life, how could this have helped me? And now you're shifting your perspective. You're alchemizing this event. And the perspective that you take will draw in that reality, will actually allow reality to also show you reality from that side where it actually starts to be beneficial for you. Now, this is just an example of something in your personal life and how you can use this. You see how powerful this is? This is magic. This is how you shift reality. And reality is a feedback mechanism. Because the more you're able to depolarize yourself, depolarize situations, depolarize concepts, depolarize all these types of things in life, the more you find the unity, the more you make the two into one, which is the act of love. And the better your life will be. Because that's what we are here to do. That is what I really believe we are here to do. Is to find the unity constantly in all these little dualities that we encounter in our lives. Now go and experiment with this and try to see where you are polarized. It might be hard because usually your identity is all mixed up into it. But if you understand this concept that I just explained to you, and you start applying this, and you start to ask yourself these questions, and you start to see like, hey, I don't need to be polarized. It's just one side of reality. I can just put it right here. I can always go back to it, this identity. But what if I just, for a second, act like I'm not this person who is really into this polarity, and I just go into the other one. And I just try to see it from that perspective. Why do people believe that actually? Why do they do that? Why is that? What is good about it? How does this serve myself or others? And just for a moment, don't go back in the other one. Just try it out as a thought experiment. Maybe do it for a week or a month or even a year. And then, at a certain moment, when you've really immersed yourself into that one, now you can go to the other one back again, and now you can start to look at them both. You can start to see where are they actually similar? Where do they fit into each other? In which situation is it maybe better to be in this one, and in which situation is it maybe better to be in that one? And now you start to create this harmony. And where now it's no longer just about this rational thing about, it's about this, it's about that. It starts to become a feeling of flow. It's where love starts to be. Go and experiment with this and let me know how it works for you. I'm definitely not done talking about this topic because there's so much to say about it. But I hope I've given you a brief introduction and explanation about depolarization and what it can do for your life. Thank you.